Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Vincent, and I want to thank RISC for inviting me here to present here. I want to thank Ed for inviting me here. We did a Hive project earlier last year, and I was just we were trying to apply to different grants, and we're talking about my background. And he said, "Oh, that's a very interesting background," and Ed invited me to present here and just share my thoughts on the cybersecurity risk. And I thought, yes, well, let's do this. And so a little bit about me, or this is what to expect. Who am I? We'll talk about different frameworks, a little bit about trend, a little bit about my team, different frameworks that exist in cybersecurity to manage vulnerability and how to make sense of all of it. And since I assume y'all are actual scientists and knows a lot about money, so let's talk about money, and then we'll talk about ransomware and service. So I want to clarify that I'm not a salesperson. This is not a sales pitch. But we do have our salesperson here, Antoine here. So if you want to buy our products, he's our guy. And so I'm a senior manager at the Trend Micro Zero Day Initiative. And ZDI, we'll talk a little bit about that later on. And then I also run the internship program at Trend Micro. I have background in computer engineering. I'm also a CISSP. And I'm a reverse code engineer, vulnerability researcher. So the gist is I'm very technical based, and I'm not a salesperson, and this is not the sales pitch. And the reason why we're having this talk is do we all know what this equation is? I have no clue what this equation is. But this is the Black-Scholes-Morton's model for pricing options. And I believe some of you probably would know what this means. It's I believe they won the Nobel Prize for figuring out how to price the options, call options or in the stock market. And I'm hoping that this presentation will help the insurance industry, actual scientists understand a little bit more about cybersecurity and cybersecurity risk, and maybe figure out how to price insurance premium, which is a very hard problem that I believe the industry is facing right now. So basically, it's just throwing things out there and see what kind of interest or collaboration that might come out of this. And so I want to talk about cybersecurity risk. So security is fundamentally about human power and conflict. And so the security guard wants to stop the thieves coming in. It's either you do it by force or you kick them out. So it's about conflict, and that's just true in the physical realm or the cyber realm. And cyber is the extension of the physical world, and that's by extension extent of physical conflict in the cyber realm. And with that said, that means there are a lot of overlap between physical security and cybersecurity. So again, it's about deterrence, it's about evading, I want to build a wall, and then you go around the wall, like the cat and mouse game. And it doesn't matter how secure your network is, if someone can just come in and grab their laptop and steal all the data. So there's definitely some overlap there. And there's also parallel between physical security and cybersecurity. So think of cybersecurity as defending your cyber castle. So we're a layered approach. In the castle, we've got a moat as our perimeter. We've got tall walls. We've got a very big lawn in front, so there's nowhere for attackers to hide. There's no trees, no rocks to hide behind. So those are the defending features of a castle, and it's done by layer. And if we think about that, there are lots of parallels that could be drawn between cybersecurity and physical security, and people do that. Lockheed Martin draws. I want to talk about how industry does that, and by sharing the two frameworks, cybersecurity, the cyber kill chain, and then the MITRE attack framework. So with all that said, like we just draw these parallels. It should be easy to like price insurance, price cybersecurity insurance premium. Like we just need to like look at how big the firewall or is, right? Or look at how, but that does not really make sense. There's no floodplain map, or there's no historic storm data equivalent in the cyber world. There's no like how tall is your network firewall? It doesn't really help, or it doesn't really make sense. And then some other challenges are such as cyber risks tend to come and go very quickly. And I know in the insurance industry, like climate change, is quick, and flood risk is quickly making some places uninsurable. And in cyber realm, like these risks just come and go. Like maybe like it's in a weekly or hourly basis. So like, how do you deal with that? Like, I don't know. But this is like that's why we're having this conversation and see how do we figure this out, and how do we put this into a model, or what we can do about that. I guess in the cyber realm, risk factors just show up. Like your cyber castle can suddenly be in the tornado belt, and then all bets are off. Or like car thieves figured out how to steal purple cars. No reason. It's just the car is purple. We figured out how to steal it, get it, and doesn't matter if you've got wheel locks or everything. Like we just figured out the purple cars, the pain or some magic. I can drive it away. Like how do you deal with that? I don't know. And how do you price that? I don't know. But that's, I guess, for you all to figure out. So I want to talk about the kill chain a little bit. So one problem is like 5 slides, 6 slides in, we already have like a defense contractor name on the slide. Like Lockheed Martin is the builder of the F-16 warplane. Like and they borrowed the concept in the military of a kill chain. So find the target, send the military people there, attack the target, and then destroy the target. So they're trying to borrow the same concept, like what's the attack anatomy of a cyber attack. So they have made it into like a 7-stage process, like reconnaissance, like look at what's the perimeter, like what's the, say I want to attack a website, like what kind of website technology or web technology is it using? Like, are there any weaknesses in this web technology? So that's reconnaissance. And say I found a weakness, I try to weaponize that, and I deliver like my malicious code or my malicious payload, and then it gets executed, and I install my malware, my remote control agent in the server, and then steal things, do bad things. So that's one way of how the cyber industry tries to frame what a cyber attack looks like. There's more framework. Another framework is done by the MITRE attack framework. So MITRE is a private not-for-profit company to provide engineering and technical guidance for the US Air Force. So we're seeing a theme, like it's cybersecurity is extension of human conflict or security, and all these like defenders or war or defense contractor needs to start showing up. And that's the nature of cybersecurity. It's like human conflict. And again, so this is a little bit longer chain that they're trying to map out an attack as a longer process. So we've got reconnaissance, we've got resource development, initial access, execution. So you got into the network, or you got in, how do you stay within the network? And then how do you prevent the security vendors from kicking you out? How do you evade detection? How do you become like escalate privilege, getting to the CEO's laptop? Like, so this is like a more comprehensive framework. And as the attacker progresses through their attack, this framework tries to map different techniques, tactics and procedures done used by different attackers. Like different attackers have different goals, so that will be the impacts. Like some people are in for money, some people are in for stealing information, some people just hate you, right? And they want to sow chaos. So really, it's different actors having different techniques. They have different capabilities, And each one of these small box is a technique or a tactics or a procedure. Like how would you reconnaissance? Like you can scan things, you can dumpster dive, like look at the paper. You can get a job at the company and just get all the information. So these are different techniques, and this is our framework in the industry trying to document this and try to make sense how an attack looks like. So I want to talk a little bit more about Trend Micro, and I swear this is not a sales pitch, and our philosophy of like how we deal with cyber risk. So Trend Micro has been around for 35 years. We literally grew up with the internet, and we're accumulating different capabilities and solutions as the internet evolved. And so we've got solutions for emails, solutions for cloud, like endpoint, malware, different solutions. And so this is our platform approach. Like we've got all these different solutions, and how do we bring all of them together? And we do that through attack surface risk management. So think of attack surface as things that you have to worry about. And so that's the top part. And then the zero trust architecture, what does that mean? That means that we assume there is already a breach. Like the user that logged into the network could be like a malicious attacker, and it's about like we assume the thief is already in the house. How do we kick the thief out as soon as possible instead of trying to defend the castle? Don't come in. So that really is our proactive approach versus the reactive approach of like how to stop the thieves from coming in. And yeah, so that's our platform. And what does that mean? We do this through a product called Vision One. I swear this is not a sales pitch. I am in the zero-day initiative team, so I'm down here. So we use Vision One to try to stop adversaries faster and to control all our cyber risk, and just across the whole attack surface, we try to manage that. And how do we do that? Like, so in here, I just want to highlight one thing. It's like one feature that I find y'all will be very interested in is the risk index here. So 59, like, so this is a way that we help our customers to really understand or have a concrete number of understand what is your risk at any moment in time. Like, so it's a number that we calculate, and we follow the NIST SP 800 guide for conducting risk assessment. And what that means is there are two components, like what's the impact or what's the adverse impact if event occurs, like how much is it going to cost? And then likelihood of occurrence, like, so how much does it cost and how often will it cost? And you put them together, it's like, how much does it cost per incident? And then we can like insure that, I suppose. So we do follow this guideline, and this number keeps updated. It's real time, and we, as our customers enable their telemetry, this number gets better at estimating what their risk is. So it goes from 0 to 100. 100 is very risky, like someone's gonna hack you like tomorrow or next hour, or 0 is nobody's gonna hack you. That's kind of how we're gauging it to represent it. And so I want to talk a little bit more about this risk index. This algorithm is updated from time to time. I'm not an expert in this, and in fact, I work with vulnerabilities, so I'm really in this risk factor. That's my specialization. The risk index are concerns composed of like 3 categories, like the attack intensity, and then there's the exposure, and then the security configuration. Like, so how intense is the attack? Like, how are there people actually trying to break into your cyber castle? That's one factor. Like exposure, like there are like Windows vulnerabilities that exist or people find every day, but your whole organization uses Mac, so it doesn't matter to you. So that's the exposure component. And then there's also the security configuration. Like you can buy the best security product, but if you turn it off, it doesn't matter. So there are the 3 components, and the risk index is a weighted sum of all these categories score. Again, it's this algorithm is not 100% public, but like we can get some glimpse of like how we calculate that. So we have 3 categories and divided into 10 different factors. And different factors, we've got different, more than 1,000 events. So say we got a phishing email, that's an event, and that's an indicator. So the telemetries will generate these events and tell us like what kind of risk event is happening. And those are indicators of like how much of a danger you're in, if you will. And so there's the risk score, which is per risk event. Let's see. So the risk score is calculated per asset. So there's we would assume the CEO's laptop is more important than say the intern's laptop. So we do take into account into that through the Q function. So that's really how we try to take that into consideration. I want to talk a little bit more about this Q function. It's a transform function, again, range from 0 to 100. I don't have all the details on that, but I do want to talk about the 3 components like confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And those are the fundamental triads of security. So to understand that simply, like what is confidentiality? If you think of your bank balance, if your bank balance is leaked to everyone to see, that's a breach of confidentiality. You wouldn't want someone to know how much money you have in your bank or what you're buying. So that's a confidentiality breach. Integrity breach, think of it as an attacker can change your bank balance. And now you have $100 million in your bank. Bank wouldn't like that. So that's a data integrity issue. And then availability issue is your bank funds are not accessible. You cannot draw your money. Like we just shut down the ATM network. So that's availability perspective. So losing any one of these 3 triads, that's considered a security breach, and that really is a fundamental in the cybersecurity of like how we talk about like security and breaches, and likelihood of the event. So for each asset that we have, and if we have an event that gets generated, if we get a P function or how likely this is going to have an impact. So let's see. And we do this calculation for every asset, and they all roll up into the category score. I do want to talk a little bit more about the impact side and how we do that. So again, we've got the VP person and like this this asset type, the user, very important. Like so, we score them based on their confidentiality, integrity, availability, like and how often the asset is being used. Like if say I don't know, like different users again have different like threat profiles, and this is how we try to quantify or quantify that. And again, we follow the NIST guideline, the NIST SP 800-60 guide for this to determine the business value of an asset. So that's the risk index, and we do have a technical report on how this number gets calculated. So it's down here. If you're interested, you can go back and look at that report. Let's see. And again, I want to talk about my team a little bit. So Zero Day Initiative, like what does this team do? Like, so we're the world's largest vendor agnostic but bounty program. And what that means is we buy zero-day vulnerabilities from independent researchers around the globe. And that we buy lots of them, and we're a market leader in vulnerability disclosure. We disclosed more than 1,900 vulnerabilities last year, and we work with researchers around the world. And I want to say, like, this is Microsoft thanking us for telling about security vulnerabilities in their Office products. So you can see our product logo or our team logo here. Matt's on our team, and then Pio is on our team as well. And we also work with different researchers who submit to our program and tell these vendors. So I want to talk a little bit more about like what a zero day is. Like so, a zero day is a software bug that is unknown to the vendor. The vendor has 0 day to respond to the vulnerability. And that there are two things I want to distinct, like zero-day exploits, which is like a fully fledged tool that you can launch and hack someone using zero-day exploit. Like those are really like with like nation states and advanced threat actors. And then there are like zero-day vulnerabilities are common, like and their monetary value can change from like hundreds or couple $100 million. So there, it really depends on the product. I want to talk about how our program works a little bit more. So vulnerability is submitted to our program, and then we would like purchase and buy that vulnerability. We'll create a filter for that. We'll tell the vendor about that, and then the vendor has time to fix and patch the vulnerability. And meanwhile, we'll apply a virtual patch that protects our customer, and then. And so our customers will be like protected when our virtual patch is applied. If for non-customers, like they are really protected until the vendor releases a patch, and then they apply the patch, then they're protected. So this is the distinction between like zero-day and end-day exposure. It really is like when is the patch and applied. And sometimes attacks happen before there's a patch available or someone applies a patch. So really is we're trying to increase the protection time that our customer gets. That's the whole purpose of my team. So I want to talk about a little bit about the bugs that we acquired through the program. So so these are top 10 CWEs of bugs that we purchased. So we can see CW 125 out of bound reads. That's the most popular. The second one is stack-based buffer overflow. So you may ask, what is a CWE? So CWE is stands for Common Weakness Enumeration. Again, it's maintained by the MITRE Corporation. It tries to catalog the types of vulnerability. Basically, how many different ways a programmer can shoot their foot, and we try to categorize that. And some technologies are immune to certain CWE. Say Java, the programming language, is immune to memory corruption bugs, but they actually are prone to deserialization bug. And some problems or weaknesses with like a CWE program is like this categorization is not assigned consistently. It's assigned by the submitter or sometimes the CNA, the person who submits or logs the vulnerability. But this is what we've got. Again, like this is their website, and you can see in here, these are CWEs by software development. Again, my Java example, or by hardware design, like ARM CPUs and x86 CPUs have different vulnerabilities that apply to different of them. And then say like Mac and Windows, they all have different intrinsic weaknesses. So this is an example of like an entry CWE 121. So this is a classic example of a security vulnerability. Like by classic, I mean tomorrow is the 28th anniversary of the seminal paper about how do we exploit this vulnerability. So the work is called Smashing Stack for Fun and Profit by Aleph One. It was published in 1996, November 8th. And if we look back a couple slides earlier, they are still the second most common bug that we purchased. And that really speaks to the problem that we're facing in the cybersecurity realm. And yes, that speaks to like job security. And I want to show a little bit more about this CW entry. They try to provide some more useful information so you can see how this is related to other research concepts, and they have like a tiered approach, and they give you an example of like what this bug is, like what to look for. and the background information. And further down, there are like references for further reading. So CWE is a very good resource for learning about different vulnerability types. And then, so I want to talk about our disclosure a little bit more. So this is the CVSS distribution of our bugs in the past 8 years. And you can see it's a number that ranges from 0 to 10. And from 9 to 10, that's critical. 7 to 9, that's like high, medium, and low. So what it tries to do is measure the severity of the vulnerability. And so this is maintained by the first.org. The industry is still using version 3.1, but the version 4 is actually released, and it has a lot more metrics. And let's see. So what the industry tries to do is, you've got a CVSS 9 bug. We should patch that very, very soon compared to like we've got a CVSS 1 bug. So it's about like prioritizing patches and vulnerabilities that you want to care about. I guess like problems with CVSS. Again, it's not consistently applied, even though there are rule sets or guides on how to apply those. They are not consistently applied by everyone. Like not everyone is enforcing those rules properly or consistently. There's inherently a conflict of interest in assigning this score. Vendors have the incentives to downscore the vulnerability due to reporting issues. Like if your vulnerability is past, I believe 7.8 or 8, you have to go through further process. So I was literally in calls and they would ask like, how do we make this score lower? And I will have to pull up the guideline like this. We scored it because of this guide, and that's why this is the number, and we cannot make it lower. And then I guess another aspect is like temporal metric group. It tries to capture the dynamic nature of vulnerabilities being exploited, but there's not really a decay. Like it's a once and done. So nobody goes back and updates that, hey, an exploit is available now, or like we are very confirmed about that. So those are some weaknesses on that. For the CVSS v4 has even more metrics, and it tries to address a lot of these concerns that we have, but it's very complicated. So I want to talk again more about CVE. Like, what's a CVE? So it's basically an ID to for the industry to track software. So it started in 1999. So we've got around 250,000 of bugs documented to date. And then CISA, the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency in the US, they also maintain a known exploitable vulnerability catalog. So we're thinking, hey, we've got lots of data, like from very old time, like in past 20 or so years of data. So we've got lots of data to work with, right? Like that's our floodplain table, right? So unfortunately, it's the program has gone through multiple rule changes, and that I guess the good folks at F5 they crunched the numbers, and basically the volume of bugs is nonlinear, and that the gist is that if you want to work with this data, you have to work with the data from 2016 and on, due to the change of the program, like the introduction of CNA, which are CVE number authority, and they would submit that. And so I would highly encourage you all to further read this presentation. And they've crunched this number in all the ways that they could imagine, and I just can't cover that. And I think you all will find this very interesting. So again, here's the CVE website, and this is an entry of a CVE that we just released yesterday. Like we purchased this bug and we just released it yesterday. And you can see we've got a short description, we've got the resources, where is the vendor patch, where's the vendor advisory, and if we go further down, we can see what's the CVSS score here, and then we've also got the CWE. So pretty pretty much every vulnerability has these attributes, and they're all like nicely parsable in a JSON format. So if you really want to work with this data, it's very easy to work with. I want to talk a little bit more about the KEV. So that's the CISA. They maintain a known exploited vulnerability catalog. So our attackers using these vulnerabilities, and they try to document that. And that's another good data point that people could use to try to capture the risk there. So that's kind of all I want to talk about, like ZDI. And I want to talk about like vulnerability disclosure. So what happens when you find a bug? Like for a researcher, there are a couple of ways that they could do. Like you could just go full disclosure, going public details that everyone. Everyone gets the details at the same time. The vendor gets the details, the attacker gets the details, the customers get the detail at the same time. So that's full disclosure, and that and like researchers do. Yeah. So like why would someone do that? Like sometimes it's very hard to disclose the vulnerability to the vendor. It's vendors does not have like a reporting channel. Like you just put it online to let everyone know. There's like coordinate disclosure, which is what ZDI does. We would try to work with the vendor, try to make sure we've got like a good patch, like make sure we talk about that, and then with the vendor and coordinate when the patch gets released, advisory get released. So no details are made before the public release of the patch. And there's also non-disclosure, like just don't tell anyone about that. And then you can use that for active attacks. And like, who would want to do that? People dislike you very much, right? So different disclosure approaches will have different consequences. And done correctly, good actions, and done incorrectly, it might lead to bad press. And yeah. So one example of like disclosure driving action is we want to show this, like Foxit. We had a disagreement with like Foxit. They said we won't fix this bug. We don't think it's relevant, and then we blocked about it. And then after we blocked about it, they changed their mind and fixed the vulnerability. So really, it's like we're still coordinating with them, but again, it's like disclosure that driving actions. So for our program, if the patch is incomplete, we'll try to reduce the timeline to keep the customers protected more quickly. And I want to talk about disclosures that don't drive actions. Like you just dump an exploit online, no analysis, nobody knows if this is even real, and there's no acknowledgement. And then you can't really do anything with this. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not, maybe it's malware, maybe it wants you to install it and run it, and then like nobody knows. But that doesn't really drive any actions. Like you can't patch this because there's no patch for it, right? So those are the different disclosure philosophies. And I want to talk about exploit economy. So that's where we're going to talk about money. So there are a couple of ways for security researchers to monetize their research output. Like nobody does security research for free, even though you really enjoy looking at ones and zeros. Like you're gonna make a living out of it. So one way to do that is to go through bug bounty programs such as like CDI ourselves, and then they can sell it to exploit brokers, or they can sell it to the criminal markets. And we'll talk about each of those. So again, selling to bug bounty program, they will submit a bug to us. We'll give them a report offer, or again, it's the we'll report it to the vendor, and the vendor fixes it. So that's the most worry-free way of monetizing your research work. So we're not the only game in town, and that there are vendor-specific programs. So Mozilla will buy all the Mozilla bugs. Google will buy all the Google bugs. But difference with our team is that we buy all the bugs. We're not the earliest. Accenture iDefense founded a couple years earlier. and then we buy the most. And then beyond security, they also buy some vulnerabilities. So those are some of our friends. There's also bug bounty as a service where these companies come in and help different vendors to run their bug bounty program to really mature their vulnerability disclosure process. And you may ask, like, is this legal? Like, can I just sell these bugs? And yes, there are regulations that exist for these. So this is the Wassenaar Agreement. So this, I believe, this was came into effect in 2013, and the purpose of this is to prevent Western technology companies from selling surveillance technology to governments that's known to abuse human rights. So this regulation governs like dual use skill set technology that can be. So basically, it's there are regulations out there for countries in red, and there are other local regulations that exist. So it's semi-regulated market. And then there's like the second option of selling to exploit brokers. Like, who are these exploit brokers or governments? So researchers find bugs, they sell it for a lot more money now, and then they would sell to exploit brokers, or they sell it straight to the government agencies. And then, but like, why would exploit brokers give researchers so much money? Because they're gonna resell it to, we don't know, or maybe resell it to the people who print the money. So again, like these vulnerabilities are used against, we don't know. So really that's there's like a moral gray zone there, or like different people have different philosophy of like how to monetize their research. And so that's another way of doing that. So who are these exploit brokers? So these are some names that exist, but again, like when you sell to exploit brokers, you don't really know where you're selling your bugs to or who you're selling the bugs to. And I want to talk about initial access corporation. So these are some other teams or companies out there that sells initial access to people who will pay the money. So here are some lead pricing. So this is alleged lead pricing. If you've got 8 million euros, you can hack 10 iOS device concurrently. So there is a price to these exploits, and yeah, it's very interesting. But like again, like want to talk a little bit more about. So finally, there's the criminal marketplace. Like researchers find the bug and they can auction it off in the dark web forums for a certain amount of money. They can sell it to ransomware crews. They can sell it to the initial access brokers for. And then there's like sometimes if your account is misconfigured, like you don't need a bug. So really, these are other ways that like the researchers can monetize their research. And we're talking about ransomware. I want to highlight ransomware as a service. So researchers find bugs and they sell these bugs to initial access broker. They find a way into the organization. They exploit the organization, and then the initial access brokers would sell it to the ransomware operator, ransomware as a service operator. So really, it's a direct value chain that's very efficient in monetizing security vulnerabilities. And that's thanks to the invention of the cryptocurrency where you can really monetize your breach very easily. And it's I guess the takeaway is like the market is very efficient, and that like I read stories that like cyber criminals would go down the insurance client list and then just go down the list one by one, and like this insurance client like will just ransom this and this and this and this, and So if we think about how this compares to the physical world, like say you leave your car unlocked in the driveway, like maybe for one night, probably nobody will come steal it. But in the cyber world, like if you leave your car in the driveway, it will get stolen very quickly. And because it's very easy to monetize these, and there are people who specialize in monetizing these weaknesses. And I like to think back to some research paper that I was reading, like I think mathematicians like to think of like hacking or breach as an event using the Poisson distribution. Like, oh, it happens randomly. Eventually, someone's gonna hack you. But like in order to use this distribution, like you have to assume the events are happen randomly and independently. But these are attackers that has a goal to maximize monetization. So maybe these breaches are not necessarily independent, and that we might want to rethink how we model these breaches. So yeah, like again, it's and then the ransomware operators just launders the money, and so there are different like rules and regulations. The government's like writing laws for these about like whether it's possible to on reporting, whether they're allowed to pay these ransom payments, and that so these are some regulations that y'all can look into as well. See, how we're doing on time. Beyond security patches. Let's skip these. It's like we'll talk a little bit more about this the program. So why does Trend have a ZDI team that just spends money and buy these bugs? Like again, like we get like very good threat intelligence, and then through our different programs, we get to influence the industry. Like, hey, we would really want to pay these amount for these very valuable targets, and we get to get very valuable intelligence. My team also hosts the home to own hacking competition. I just came back from Ireland, and we were literally working with the best hackers in the world. And this is so we've got plenty of events target have with different themes, with different focus. Some are focused on like enterprise software, some are more IoT, automotive, ICS. So this is some of the best hackers hacking a Tesla in Vancouver. So you can see that the Tesla windshield is like wiping in a erratic pattern, and that they pop the trunk. So it's showing that they could send random CAN messages to the Tesla car to and demonstrate their control. And they weren't in the car, and they're attacking this through like the wireless technology. And we work with Tesla. They sponsor us for like 12 years, and we have good relations with them, and we try to fix these bugs as soon as possible. And again, with these competitions, again, we work literally working with the best hackers in the world, and we get to see these exploits and against different targets. So here's Microsoft Teams, like an attacker calls you, and then suddenly a calculator shows up, and you've been breached. So we get to learn about how the attackers do these uh, very amazing things, and that's why we keep doing it. I think it's just the exploit running now. It's nothing's really happening until something happens. be a different one. So, yeah, like. Again, on the left we've got the attacker. So these are two different computers. On the right we have the victim. So the attacker is trying to initiate a call and call the victim on Teams. Probably see a call. And then you can see Teams being closed, and that it's executing Launchpad, Notepad. So the attacker caused Notepad to be launched on the victim side. It's really, yeah, more. So I've got more of these examples. So this is in Miami. So we're blurring out the details because the attackers are showing, printing out their debugging messages for them. But on the right, we've got the victim machine, and this is we're able to monitor or see a new process being launched on the attacker. And on the left here, we can see that we've got a shell that's connected back to the victim machine. And here we can see that like this process being launched in the victim machine. So very cool things that we get to see, so yeah, so again, like we get to look at these very advanced attacks and really tear it apart and learn about these trends and really work closely with the researchers and the vendors. And that's why we do this, so that we have the best cyber threat intelligence industry. And I think that's everything. That's everything I have for everyone. Yeah, bug bounty programs impacts everyone. Exploit market is crowded and ever shifting. Zero-day vulnerabilities become end-day vulnerabilities, and I want everyone to take some more further readings, like that I recommend everyone to further explore that by reading these readings. So, and if you want to learn more about what our team is doing, these are all the ways you can keep connected with us. And thank you everyone for paying attention and listening.
Vincent, for such an interesting talk. Does anyone have any questions? All right.
How is cybersecurity related to cryptocurrency and fintech? I guess one interesting example is if you leave your cryptocurrency wallet key, if you accidentally push it online, that amount of cryptocurrency will be gone in like 20 minutes. So yeah, probably even shorter. And if people believe that cryptocurrencies have value, then that's like the cryptocurrencies by themselves, by definition, is like a bug bounty, right? Like you can steal money. And I'm not super familiar with those that aspect, so I can't really comment too much on that.
I think Ed has something to say.
Hi, Vincent. Hello. Sorry that I couldn't attend in person. I'm away from York for this whole term. But thank you for presenting. Super fascinating topic. Recently, we had our annual conference on systemic risk, and there was someone presenting on cyber risk. Cyber risk was one of the topics for the plenary sessions there. And they said that hackers actually can hack smart appliances, which is definitely a good idea for probably purchasing a cyber insurance. I have never really seen smart fridge or microwave being hacked, but somehow looks like it is feasible, and particularly seeing your video about Tesla, This somehow supports this evidence. My question is about risk scores. If you could please go to the slide where you were describing those risk scores of what you're doing. Like you had a slide about, you started with this formula, the Black-Scholes probability or option. Yeah, so this is the risk score, right? So general question. The risk score is something that you produce at Trend Micro?
Yeah, so our clients enable telemetries and these generate events, and then that gets put into this ASRF, and then we calculate. So we can see that this user has a score of 100, and this user has a score of 84, and then this computer has a score of 81, and it all rolls up to eventually the whole organization has a risk of 59. Through our turning on different features and on and off, that will actually tune different weights a little bit. So, and if you turn on more telemetry, hopefully this will more accurately reflect the risk that the organization is having.
Thank you. I'll tell you why I'm asking. This is actually a really important thing when trying to connect, I guess, the vulnerability, the cyber level, and the insurance level, right? So, for example, when actuaries, well, very, very roughly speaking, what we need to price an insurance contract, let's say for cyber, right? It's usually the loss amount in dollars multiplied by the probability of loss of this loss occurring, right? So your risk score is a number between 0 and 100, as you said, right? Then what we need to do is to convert it somehow into the probability, which is between 0 and 1, by the way, very well connected to your formula that you started with, where the capital phi is actually the probability, the cumulative distribution function of the Gaussian distribution, right? So your formula that you started with, in fact, results in the probability, right, that actuaries need, but your score is not really a probability, right? So I have two questions. Well, I have many questions, of course, but two questions.
That's great.
Hmm?
No, that's exactly why we're here. Is like, let's have like further.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And this is why I'm asking. This is why I really like your talk. I mean, Trend Micro, I understand that you do it for customers. I do understand that this is fairly probably simple to do it for a computer, right? One computer. So you sort of, you know more with the computer, you know what is installed in it. Of course, you don't really know the skills of whoever is using the computer, but you still can probably approximate the score for this one machine. It becomes, I assume, much more involved if you look at the whole company. For example, HSB Canada, right? Or Munich Re. If you want a score for the company, it becomes much more cumbersome, I assume, right?
Yeah.
So how do you do it? Are you doing those scores from bottom up at the company level as well?
Yes. So maybe I'm not super clear in here, but there are two different things. There's a risk score, which is per asset, per computer, per user, and each individual has a risk score, and then all these risk score roll up into different factors and categories, and all these scores go in eventually into the risk index. So that 59 you're seeing is directly related to the individual scores of each computer. So say if you patch one vulnerability in one server, your score will go down. The big number will go down. And I think Antoine has something to say as well.
And it's not just devices specific. Risk is also calculated for identities. It's also calculated for SaaS applications that are used. It's also calculated based on cloud asset resources as well. So not just a computer risk, not just a risk based on a laptop, for example.
Yeah, I would say big number we see is a approximation to the probability of how likely the or the security posture of the company, because these are all based on the calculations of individual components concerning different events, right?
Mhm.
And this is live and continuous, so we can see a graph like how actions will drive the score lower. And I believe we have got customers who got their insurance premium reduced because they reduced their score from 79 to like 60. That's a marginal change, and yeah.
Mhm. I see. So I asked this question because it would be really awesome, I guess. And with Trend Micro's market share, I think you have a huge market share here in Canada. Or maybe it's feasible to create a cyber risk map, maybe for Canada. I don't know how feasible it is. Of course, it will not be precise, but maybe indicatively, a cyber risk map for Canada. That I mean, you understand what I mean, right? It's like you mentioned climate risk, for example. So people are trying to create a climate, not a climate, sorry, a flood risk, part of climate risk, and then there are flood maps that people are still struggling with and working on them. But there are some initiatives. I'm wondering whether or not you have heard about a cyber risk map for Canada, where at least the infrastructure, it's not really important for this for this sake, whether or not it's just a computer or cloud based assets or whatever. But for what I was thinking about is a sort of a cybersecurity map that would sort of say, well, for this company, that would visibly show everyone, insurers, for example, who are writing cyber risk policies, what exactly the score, the vulnerability score is for different businesses. Like it's something at a national level or maybe provincial level to start with. Have you heard about anything like that? Do you think it's feasible?
So what we do today actually is we do it by vertical. So if you look at that toggle in the middle, right middle there, we say compare with other orgs. So we could baseline today as it is, the product you could baseline with other organizations based on your industry vertical. I would imagine it's pretty straightforward to do it by country as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome, in fact, because recently there's a big discussion. I don't know how much you know of, for example, the Insurance Bureau of Canada. They are super interested in anyhow having Canadian cyber risk assessed in monetary values. This has not been done. There is a global research by Lloyd's, I think. I'm not really sure. I don't want to say something that's wrong. I think it was Lloyd, but there's a global research that actually assesses the monetary amount of the cyber risk globally, but it's pretty, the methodology is not really clear, right? And they don't really speak about Canada. But in Canada, we're not aware of anything that has been done. And what I would think is natural is to create this map for Canada. And your score speaks about likelihood product with, I guess, some impact, right? And the impact is not necessarily monetary per se. It's something that comes before monetary. I think it's more of an operational risk, not assessed in monetary units, like, for example, loss of some brand or loss of data. But this has to be augmented with an additional layer of a monetary impact map. And if this huge multi-layer map has been created for Canada, then we can actually have a decent, well, let's say a much better than today cyber risk insurance sector that will be able to use this map to actually price the policies. Because now, based again on my conversations with the IBC, with the Insurance Bureau of Canada people, the policies are not very sophisticated. They actually have lots of exclusions in them. And yet still the market grows. very, very fast, and the projection is that the market will grow very, very steeply in the very near future. Anyhow, this is just my 2 cents, and I have no clue really. Majority of the things that you were talking about, I don't really understand. So
No, that's great feedback and definitely, I mean, we have that data, right? So
yeah, exactly.
you would compare, like, instead of in addition to the compare with other orgs, we could have a toggle that says compare with the country average, right? Or get that country score too.
I guess this also again speaks to the nature of cybersecurity. Like on the internet, there are no country boundaries, and that's why it's not very often where we say cyber risk for this country, because
Yeah.
you're all connected and the infrastructure is spread out as well.
What you're saying is the country factor matters when it comes to insurance, right?
Exactly. So for the losses, for example, for me, you're absolutely right. Vincent. The infrastructure is everywhere, of course. For me, I mean, I guess for insurance, it's important who pays out the losses, right? So if, for example, HSB Canada, let's say, underwrote ABC policies, right? Then HSB Canada will be entitled to paying out the losses, right? So yes, at the infrastructure level, I guess I do understand that this is very global and the servers can be located anywhere. But for finances, for the upper layer of this map that multi-layer map that I mentioned, it is much more rigid in terms of the monetary vulnerability because of who actually pays. Is it the Canadian business? Because then if a Canadian insurance company, like for example HSB Canada, and I'm saying HSB Canada all the time because we work with them on the cyber risk project, but of course there are many, right? If HSB Canada is paying this loss, then it's very important for Canada because PASIC, a body that has to make sure that Canadian P&C companies remain solvent, has to actually observe what HSB Canada does, has to check that they're doing well. And if something goes wrong with HSB Canada, then PASIC has to kick in. And if PASIC can't really cover their losses, then the government of Canada has to come in and cover the losses. So the upper layer of this map that I mentioned is much more rigid, in my opinion, than the sort of the infrastructure bottom layer.
One comment, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we could separate it by like different tenants, like we work with like multinational companies as well, and they have different tenants in different regions, and I believe.
And each company is also tagged by country as well, so
the data is there, we can get it somehow, but like yeah, we just need to do that if that's something that's of interest for the insurance industry. Like we didn't know, and it's great feedback. And,
you're also calculating cost.
Yeah, and the monetary value.
It's also going to be calculating very soon in this module. Will be calculating cost as well if they get breached.
So monetary value is coming. So.
Yes. I look forward to the details on that.
Anyway, so maybe we can discuss it off. I mean, maybe let's have a meeting and discuss it, because we, as the RISC Foundation, we are very much interested in this. And we do want to work with IBC on that, the Insurance Bureau of Canada and PASIC, who are, so our interest is national, sort of national interest, right? We want the insurance, we want to make sure that the insurance sector, the P&C sector here, is well capitalized, right, and is able to cover the losses that if and when they occur, right? So this is our interest, right? But for doing that properly, well, and why it's clear, right? Because again, at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, the government of Canada will have to pay, and this is taxpayers' money, right? But to do that properly from the actuarial perspective, again, super roughly speaking, we have to have those probabilities and they are quite involved because there are dependencies because you can't just add or do a weighted average of standalone risk scores, right? But this sounds like an involved problem, and this problem has not been solved as far as I know. And so we are discussing that with IBC and PASIC, and we work with HSB on something. But you have data for it, right? And so it would be really awesome if, but maybe let's discuss what your interests here are, and it would be really awesome to maybe create a working group.
Yeah, for sure. Just, again, I think with industry, like insurance industry, you guys know what the cars, what the theft rates, like you have all the data, but like cyber wise, it's like data is with the security vendors and like.
Exactly. But we should be able to, well, I can say that people in flood risk actually succeeded. Unfortunately, we don't have a success story to, but we were not involved, so we are not to be blamed. But I think that it's like you say, the insurance industry knows the upper level of this map, right? The monitoring, and it's also they know exactly how they underwrite, and they also know what they are committed to pay, right? Because they know their products. So the upper level will depend very much on how they underwrite and what they are committed to pay, because they don't necessarily cover the whole loss, right? They sometimes do co-insurance, or they do deductibles, or sometimes they buy a lot of reinsurance, and the reinsurance is coming from outside of Canada, and then it's a totally different story, right? But this basic infrastructure, likelihood, you call it, layer, right, is definitely something that no one really knows better than you guys.
Like again, very happy, like would love to collaborate more and like like
we could make it
with the right people and yeah, for sure.
Maybe we can carry this over to another meeting to discuss. If anyone has any questions, any other questions for Vincent?
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening, and I hope
Thank
you
you.
learned something.
Yeah, I guess that concludes our colloquia today. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Vincent, for such an interesting talk. And yeah.
Thank you.